Blake Bowman, welcome back to Movement Fix Podcast.
Dr. Ryan DeBell, it's good to be here, man. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Wild times. I mean, a lot has changed since we chatted that was before the lockdown, wasn't it? The last time?
I think it was, man. That's what I was saying to you before we started. I think it was like right before it all happened, you know? So,
yeah. It was 75 days ago, I think.
Sounds about right.
Feels like 40 years in some ways.
Indeed, friend.
What is it? One of the things I wanted to talk with you about is, hey, you're GuerrillaZen, right? The Zen and how to stay in a positive Zen-like state during things are getting more weird. Like just when it seemed like, okay, things are starting to open back up, now we have these protests and protests are fine, right? Like people should protest, but we have looting and we have vandalism and we have so much other stuff going on top of the lockdown and people being stuck at home, not going outside, not getting sun, not being with people. All of this stuff is just, it's like we need tools. We need tools that we can use to help ourselves. And you just rubbed frankincense on yourself before we started recording. And so like, if there's things that people can be doing that can help, I feel like you are a guy who knows a lot of these things. And I would love to know what your thoughts are on that. Like what can people be including that they're not to help them right now?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I think it's very pertinent for today's day and age too. Well, being an entrepreneur running my own business, I've always had a lot of weight on my shoulders and stress, as you have as well, Ryan. And, prior to all this stuff happening, I basically had to figure out effective stress management, like protocols and things that help to mitigate stress, just to deal with like the responsibilities of running a business, all the risk associated with that and everything like that. So yeah, I'm pretty versed in doing that. And, one of the, obviously, I don't know how obvious this is actually to some people, but it's very important to have a grounding routine in the morning and the evening that you go through. And that can look different for everybody. It can incorporate, a mix of, or have these things in isolation from each other, but like meditation, journaling, prayer, doing breath work, or a combination of all those things. Like I said, I think it's really important, especially now more than ever, to have a routine like that grounds you and calms you down and reminds you of the things that you're grateful for. And I think it's just very important that people are staying consistent with that right now, because, like I said, we need it now more than ever. Another thing I've been doing is, getting out into nature, getting out into the sun. I'm lucky enough to live in like kind of a rural place where I can just step out my door and be outside. So that's something I've been doing as well, and something I would encourage other people to do. I've also been using a lot of different like adaptogens, which are basically herbs that are known to help support the body's adaptation and resiliency to stress. That's what adaptogens are. They're like a category of herbs. And, some of the ones I've been using a lot of are reishi, which is a medicinal mushroom that's in my product Zen Blend. But I've also been using ashwagandha, which is proven to mitigate the release of cortisol, which is your, primary stress hormone. So yeah, I'll do reishi in the morning. I'll do ashwagandha and rhodiola. And that actually helps a lot, man. That's pretty powerful combination of things.
How do you how does the ashwagandha and what did you say, the rhodiola?
Yeah.
How do they come?
You can get them in different forms. The rhodiola that I have is from Gaia Herbs, and it's like a liquid extract. The ashwagandha that I have is a powdered extract, and that's from Omika Organics. So I just kind of mix all these things into like a little bit of water first thing in the morning, and I'll drink that. And yeah, I can definitely notice days when I don't do it, man. I can also just way more like chaos throughout my day, more angst and anxiety. I can like literally feel cortisol rising in my body. And people respond differently to cortisol, but when I have high cortisol, I like don't feel hungry. My appetite is like completely suppressed. And I just feel anxious and unwell all the time. They say that calmness is the cradle of power. And I hate being removed from that seat of power over myself when I'm in this state of stress and anxiety. And that's how I feel when I miss doing my morning routine and I miss doing these, taking these adaptogens throughout the day. And it really became clear to me last week how powerful of an effect those things were having, because I got contrast. Because when all this rioting and stuff, happened, I stopped doing a lot of those things and I felt horrible. So, yeah, I think it's very important for me now to be mindful of those things and making sure that I'm staying consistent with them.
Do you take them in the morning and at night, or just in the morning?
Just in the morning.
What is your, it's funny, after our last podcast, I started taking reishi, and I was rating every day I was rating like my energy levels, my mental attitude, and all this stuff. So I could like, at the end of the day, I had this app and I just had it configured so I could put in the number, subjective ratings. And I was like, my happiness and my like positive mental attitude were like 8, 9, 10 consistently.
Yeah, man.
And, there's a lot of reasons why that could be, obviously. But there was certainly a correlation. It doesn't seem like it would do that. Like, it seems like it's just, like if I took a greens powder, it's like, I don't really feel a difference when I take a greens powder. But I don't know, man. It was, I'm a believer. Although awesome, I don't think you actually need to be a believer, because there is like, actual objective data to show this stuff.
Well,
right?
Yeah, I agree. That reishi is very revered in Chinese medicine. Chinese medicine practitioners use a lot of different medicinal mushrooms and herbs, and they call reishi the queen of the mushrooms, right? So they've really designated it as like one of the most powerful amongst all of the medicinal mushrooms. And it really is that way. It's not going to be a game changer by itself. You still need to do other things, which I'm sure you were doing, journaling, meditating, and things like that. But it synergizes very well with those things. And if you can find an herb or a mushroom that actually has like a palpable subjective effect on your body, then those are rare. Because I've tried so many different herbs, it'll amaze you, man. So many different herbs, so many different mushrooms, greens, powders, all sorts of different nutraceuticals, things I've foraged in the wild. And yeah, a lot of things are good for you because you've heard they are, you've read research that they are, but you just you ingest it, you take it, you don't really feel a difference, right?
Right.
So those few ones that you do feel, you want to stick with those ones.
I keep saying reishi, so it's reishi.
Reishi.
Reishi. Okay.
Reishi. Everybody pronounces it differently.
Okay, I thought my ignorance was on display.
Well, you butchered it pretty good there with your pronunciation. I've never heard anybody, I don't know.
What reishi?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm ignorant. The amount of things that we don't know is millions of times greater than the things that we do know. Isn't that true?
That is true.
What is your morning? What do your routines look like?
Well, nowadays my morning routine kind of starts in the evening the night before. So I will use the self journal, which is like a planner system, to basically plan out my entire day the night before. So I'll put 3 big rocks in there, which are like mission critical tasks I need to accomplish. And then I'll put everything else that I still need to do that day on my to-do list, but those are not prioritized. The big rocks are prioritized. And I'll do that the night before. But in the morning, what I'll do is I'll wake up, I will review what I have to, do that day, just so it's fresh in my mind again. I'll write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. I'll kind of restate my mission, what I'm really focused on at this point in time. Like I said, I'll review the rest of what's in my to-do list, and then I will do some like Wim Hof breathing And once I conclude the Wim Hof breathing, I'll read over some affirmation cards that I have, and then I'll pray. And that's what I've been doing now. I used to like meditate, but now I find that like praying and like filling my mind with more intention instead of just trying to like clear my mind, that's been more fruitful for me. So that's usually how I start my day. And then I'll take those herbs that I was telling you about, have some coffee, and just get started into the stuff that I have to do.
What does your breathing routine look like that you're doing?
So I'll usually do like 1 or 2 rounds of Wim Hof breathing, which is like it's almost like, it's like hyperventilating, doing deep diaphragmatic breaths. You ever done it before?
I've tried doing different, breathing methods. So I'm familiar with, like, isn't one of them called like holotropic breathing?
Yeah. It's very similar to Wim Hof breathing. Basically, like, you take in 30 giant inhalations and exhalations, and then after the 30th breath, you just hold your breath for as long as you can. And then basically you repeat the cycle again. So 30 breaths, hold for as long as you can. That's like 1 round. I'll do 2 of them. Yep.
Like,
I
how
really
fast?
find that
like is that how you're doing it?
Yep. Exactly.
Whew. Yeah, I've done that before. I get euphoric. I really do. I have this weird.
That happens to everybody when they do that, dude.
Yeah, it's wild.
I've like led it. Last year I was invited to speak at this like hippie festival thing in the woods called Divine Pine Gathering, and I taught that on stage to like a giant group of people. And a lot of them had done it before, but a lot of them hadn't done it before. And it's, I really like taking people through that because it really changes your state like profoundly just through your breathing. It's almost like you took drugs.
Yeah. But you're super clear mentally.
Yes.
It's like, I was doing these meditations from on the Sadhguru app, if you're familiar with Sadhguru, and then one of them was like, you're visualizing that you're climbing this mountain, okay, and you're looking up and you feel the cold air on your face and you're breathing as you feel like you're climbing. And the first time I did it, I was like terrified because he's doing the breathing too, and I was like, oh my God, I feel like I'm dying right now. And then when I stopped, I was like laughing like a little silly version of myself.
Yep.
Like just giggling.
Hilarious,
and it put me into like such a crazy, clear mental state. I started doing that before I had to make like hard decisions to get into a state of euphoria, so I feel like I could see things more clearly. But I haven't tried like so you do 30 breaths, hold, and then you immediately go into another 30 breaths.
You do what's called a recovery breath. So you end the 30 breaths with an exhalation, and then you hold your breath. And then once the breath hold is done, you take a giant inhale. That's called a recovery breath. And then you hold that for as long as you can. And then you kind of go back to like a normal pattern of breathing for a few seconds and then begin a second round. But if you want to learn how to do it from the man himself, you can just Google or, search Wim Hof breathing. And there's a bunch of videos that he has, Wim Hof, where he is showing it to you and guiding you through it in videos.
Yeah, I want to do that. It's so powerful.
It's amazing too, man, because like each round that you do, you can incrementally hold your breath longer and longer. It's insane. Like right now, if you and I try to hold our breath, just like take a big inhale and then just hold your breath, like you might be able to do that for like 30 seconds, right? But it's very common for me to like take people through this at like retreats and workshops I teach and things like that, for people to be able to hold it for 30 seconds at first, and then after like 5 rounds, be able to hold their breath for over like 2 minutes.
From 30 seconds to 2 minutes?
Yeah. And like you can accomplish that in like 15 minutes of doing this type of breathing.
Wow.
I know it sounds crazy. That's how it was the first time I did it. I was able to hold my breath for 2 minutes.
I wonder if you're like
done it before.
I wonder if you're like super oxygenating the blood.
You are.
And that's probably That's wild, man. We have so much control over our own physiology if we do those things. It's like
100%.
Do you do you not look at electronic devices or the internet for a certain amount of time in the morning, or is that something that you intend and fail at, or is that something that you're able to do?
Glad you asked that question, man. Because that's something that I have decided recently that I must start doing now. You know, with all of this chaos, I'm getting derailed personally by not restricting my viewing and consumption of this stuff. So I'm not doing that, but it's funny that you bring that up, because today I resolved to start doing that, because I can't keep, you know, looking at Instagram in the morning and checking out the news and, you know, just consuming media anymore, because it's, you know, there's so much chaos in the world that it's like infiltrating my mind when I do that, and it's derailing me.
And it's like, you know, there's obviously, well, arguably, maybe it's not obvious, right? Like you said earlier, arguably, it's important to understand what's going on in the world, but it's also, you don't need to know every little detail about everything. I mean, how could you possibly know everything that's going on everywhere, right? So, you know, we get drawn into those things, and it's like, how much of that do we really need versus how much are we in this like heightened chaotic state where we're looking for the next crazy thing that's happening, and that's how we start our day.
Yeah, dude, pure sympathetic nervous system activation, fight or flight, which we know is not good long term.
Talk about like chronically elevated cortisol levels.
Yeah.
As soon as we wake up.
My mentor, Paul Chek, talks about this. He says, like, ancestrally, our ancestors were really only in fight or flight activation during very like rare, very dangerous circumstances. Like you're being chased by a lion. So you're going to activate that that sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, adrenaline, cortisol is going to all be released to save you, right? It's going to amp up your body and make you run faster and be more vigilant because you're all stressed out, right? But it's not, we were very rarely in that kind of state. Nowadays, you know, we don't have a tiger chasing us, but everything sets us off and puts us in that state of, fight or flight. And when that's activated, you know, for anybody that's not familiar with how the autonomic nervous system works, you have this sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system, which is the fight or flight, and you have the parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system, which is like your feed or breed branch of the nervous system. The sympathetic makes you, you know, raises your cortisol and adrenaline, and basically your body can't go through any of its, like, you know, repair processes when that's activated or digest food properly. And it's mutually exclusive to the feed or breed, which activates when you're, you know, your body is at rest, your body is regenerating its cells, it's digesting food. These two systems cannot be activated simultaneously. They're mutually exclusive. So when one's turned on, the other's turned off, and vice versa. So, you know, you can see how damaging this can be to your health and your mind if you're stuck in fight or flight mode all the time, which is pretty much what we all are experiencing right now.
Mm-hmm. I wonder, like, how much good could happen in the world if everybody just spent the first hour of their day without using the internet.
Yeah, man. I think something small like that applied on a macro level would have very profound ramifications, for sure.
It's one of the most powerful things I've ever done. I mean, I struggle with it too. Like, I've gone a year where I didn't even plug my phone. I plugged my phone in like in a different room, and I didn't check it until I did, you know, a series of things. But it's so easy. It creeps back in, you know?
Yeah.
And then you get sucked into it. It just literally sucks you in. Mm-hmm. And then you're laying in bed, you just woke up, you look at it, now you're stressed, and now you try to go do this other stuff, and it's like you literally can't.
Yeah.
Because you're already in. Yeah, it's like you should wake up and like be in a parasympathetic state and then do other things to like enhance that. Right. And the other thing too, at the sympathetic state, right? Like you said, it's for survival, which means that if there was something happening and you went into a sympathetic state, there was probably like a lot of physical action you were going to take with your body. And so now we have that, but we don't do anything physically. And like we literally, it's like harder now because depending on where you're at, I mean, if you don't have a home gym, if you can't go outside and run, if you can't do whatever. So now you have like this elevated sympathetic state with no physical exertion to like offset whatever, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a stepwise process if you think about how it would have functioned.
Yeah. Yeah, you're 100% right. I think our ancestors, whenever they activated fight or flight, they were then sprinting, you know, or running from something. Yeah, now we're activating that same branch of the nervous system while we're sitting there scrolling through Instagram on our lazy boy chair. You know?
And like none of that is reality. Like if you pull out of that, it's like, wait, nothing actually has happened. All of this like drama has happened only in here. And, and like the only person who suffers from that is yourself. And maybe those around you, because it puts you in a worse state.
Yep. Exactly, man. You know, this conversation is inspiring me to get back on the train of not checking social media, or really just reducing my overall intake of it too.
It's yeah, it's strange. Like I think I told you before we started recording, I delete Instagram on my phone after I use it.
Yeah.
Because it like literally pulls my life out of me, it feels like. Do you think we should challenge everybody to just try going a week without waking up and looking at your phone?
Yeah, dude. 100%. I think that would be extremely beneficial to your mental health and your physical health too.
What if everybody did that and they just did the breathing exercises in the morning? Like, can you imagine how fundamentally shifted your day would be if you did those two things and set yourself up like that? I'm going to start. How about this? I'll start doing the breathing if you start not doing your phone.
All right, dude. We'll hold each other accountable on that.
Okay, let's do it. I'll do it.
Right.
I'll do it the way you described. I think that, you know, it's interesting, right? At a time like this, when you really feel how your own, like you said earlier, you feel like you're almost being derailed a little bit. Yeah. And you've ingrained this stuff into yourself, and it's like, you know, it's your life to be healthy and to pursue these things.
That's how I know that this is a global issue right now.
Yeah, because you really feel it and you've like fortified it in yourself, which is why I think.
And I prioritize not being derailed. So if I am getting derailed, then I know, I just intuitively know that this is happening, not just to me, but to everybody right now.
It's like a war in the mindscape.
Yeah, dude.
A lot of this. Okay, so you're doing the breathing. You what else did you say in the morning? You're doing prayer instead of meditation to kind of have more of a and you're reviewing your goals and your principles and those things.
Affirmation cards.
You're doing,
which are like beliefs that I want to like affirm in myself.
Are those? Did you make those or?
Yeah. So. Yeah, basically, you know, for anybody that doesn't know what affirmation cards are, they're affirmative statements written in the positive sense that contain beliefs that you want to like embody and, you know, program into your nervous system. A lot of this comes from like the personal development world, self-help, neuro-linguistic programming. Mm-hmm. But like one of, you know, a couple of examples of my cards are like, one of them says, my body is healthy, my mind is brilliant, and my soul is tranquil. And I read that, and you can't just read affirmation cards like that out loud and expect them to have an effect. You actually have to experience the emotion and invoke the feeling associated with whatever you're reading inside of your body. Okay. And that's the real like magic of it. You can't just read it and just, you know, be cold and be like, yeah, my mind is brilliant, my soul is tranquil, my body is healthy. You know, you got to like feel those things inside of you emotionally. And because what you imagine in your mind, your subconscious cannot distinguish between what you're imagining and what is objectively happening in reality. We both read that book, Psycho-Cybernetics, where they talk about this a lot. Mm-hmm. So that's the power of like visualization and feeling emotions intentionally. Your subconscious cannot tell the difference, like I said, between what's objectively happening and the sensory data that it's bringing in versus what you're just simply imagining, right? So you can use that for your own benefit, or it can work against you as well. You know what I'm saying?
So like
worrying about things
Uh-huh.
is like doing affirmations, but in reverse. You know?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because it's like you have your subconscious mind, which is like being told what to believe by your conscious mind.
Yes.
And your conscious mind, you can choose that. You can
Mm-hmm.
choose what happens in your conscious mind. That's why it's conscious.
Yeah.
And so you could like relay that information from the conscious to the subconscious on purpose, is what you're saying.
Yes.
And then,
Yep.
or alternatively, I think there's two other things, if I'm understanding correctly. You could have actual experiences in the world, which then go because you're consciously experiencing them, they go into your subconscious.
Yeah.
Or you could not be really aware of what's happening in your conscious mind, having doubts and worries and these things that are, they're thoughts that are occurring to you consciously, but aren't necessarily things that you have to experience.
Yeah. And at the end of the day too, have you read that book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey or Covey?
I think I read it like 5 years ago. So it's not fresh to me.
I read that book like 10 years ago when I was in college. It was like one of the first personal development books I read. But he talks about like one of the habits in there is focusing on your circle of influence and control.
Okay.
Which is focusing on events, circumstances, people, situations that you can have actual influence over, have control over, do something about, right? Because if you focus on things that are completely outside of your circle of influence and control, that's a recipe for stress and anxiety,
Like reading the news.
Yeah. So it's a little bit like subjective and open for debate. What is actually in your circle of influence and control?
Uh-huh.
How can you actually affect change? And I think some people make themselves a little bit smaller than they actually are in terms of their thought process behind what kind of change they actually think they can affect. But the principle, well, I think that's, some people hear you say only focus on circle of influence and control. They might apply that to everything and be like, I have no control over that. I have no influence over that. I have no influence over that. When in reality, they might have some influence over that thing. You know what I'm saying?
You also have the ability to control how you respond to those things too.
Yeah.
It's like I can't control that, but I can control how I interpret it and how I think about it.
Yep. 100%.
So when you're doing these affirmations, like, because I think you like the way you described it, where like, you could read the list and be like, yeah, I'm a positive person, super joyful.
Yeah.
I mean, how much time are you spending like trying to feel and like become those things? I mean, that's obviously.
I have like 15 cards. I'll spend like 2 minutes doing it.
Okay.
So not long. I've been doing it for a long time though.
So you're able to like experience those emotions quickly because you've practiced it.
I also do it right after the Wim Hof breathing because like you said, I find that puts me into a state where I can more easily do that. And they talk about this a lot in like hypnosis and NLP world. There are certain types of people that can be hypnotized and other people that just can't be hypnotized. And this has to do with your ability to, I forgot what it's called. There's like a word for it. You can either be suggestible or non-suggestible. Okay. And I think that doing breathing puts you into a more suggestible state where your subconscious is more open for like programming. You know what I'm saying?
So that's why
I think that
do it in the order.
Yeah, I think the breathing facilitates that, opens that window for, your subconscious to be programmed because you have that clarity and you're feeling like euphoric. And that's just a very short window where you can like very consciously program the right thoughts that you want into your mind and nervous system.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Have you ever been hypnotized?
No. I've hypnotized myself by putting myself into like a trance-like state through breathing and things like that.
Uh-huh.
But no, I've never been hypnotized with like a pocket watch or anything like that.
How did you were like trying to hypnotize yourself, or?
Well, I have known that like breathing can like make your body or make your mind more suggestible, like I said. So,
And that's really what
you
it
know,
is. Yeah.
yeah, it's like self-hypnosis, auto-suggestion is what they call it. So
It is
yeah,
so. When you first read Psycho-Cybernetics, how long ago was that?
that was like 6 years ago for me.
Do you remember what you thought after you read it? Were you like, what the hell is this book talking about?
No, because I had read other books
Uh,
similar to it, like
uh-huh.
Napoleon Hill's books and stuff.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had already known about the power of visualization. And, I started being exposed to that when I was wrestling in high school. My coach would always tell us about like, visualize yourself like, going out there and, um, winning the match and visualize every single thing that you want to have happen in the exact order that you want to have it happen, putting on your shoes, stepping out in the mat, shaking the hand of your opponent, having the match, winning, see all of that in your mind's eye. So I had already been exposed to that. But then after reading Psycho-Cybernetics, he like breaks it down into a very systematic formula and expounds upon it a lot, and just brought a lot more clarity to what I had already known and really kind of revealed how powerful it is.
When you, I think it's in Psycho-Cybernetics where he talks about, it might be another similar, genre of book where he talks about like he has a meeting room in his mind where he goes and like he has people that he talks to.
I think that's Napoleon Hill.
Is that from Think and Grow Rich?
I think so.
Do you do that?
I used to do that when I was, I definitely did that a lot actually when I first read Napoleon Hill. Since then, as with many habits, I've fallen out of the habit of doing that.
Yeah. I feel like when, at least when I first heard about this stuff, it sounded like so woo-woo.
Yep.
That I just was like, okay. I don't really get it.
It does sound woo-woo, but the funny thing is really successful people do this stuff anyway.
It's
oftentimes
it's like what they needed to be able to achieve.
They might not even know that they're doing it consciously, or they might not be able to describe it the way that we're describing it with this jargon, auto-suggestion, things like that. But that's what they are doing already, whether they even knew it or not.
Yeah, like I was like Michael Jordan watching that documentary on Netflix, and he would, if they lost in a game, he would, in the interview, he'd be like, it's just a bump in the road.
Yeah.
I mean, that's him doing it in a sense where it's like, that's how he viewed that. It's not like, oh no, they can beat us. No, it's a bump in the road. I know where we're going. Like that is part of that.
It's in our language even, eye on the prize, think positive. These are all, aphorisms that are based in this truth that, you need to focus on the reality that you want to have happen as like a precursory step for it to actually happen.
So right now with everything going on, like more negative thoughts are sort of able to start creeping in because it's like literally you're surrounded by this massive amount of negative energy, stressed energy. I mean, when that starts to, maybe it doesn't creep into you at all. Maybe you fortified yourself, but if it does,
it does, dude. It does.
So how do you handle it? What do you do when you start realizing? I mean, probably the first part of the battle is realizing that you're having those thoughts. Like, oh wait, I'm having lots of negative thoughts right now. Let me do something to try to. I mean, what's your process like there?
Well, I'll do a lot of the things that I already talked about. Journaling. I find that if you get it out of your mind and you journal it, that helps. But recently, like I said too, I've just been praying, praying to have those thoughts leave me and to keep my mind clear. And I honestly pray to God for like wisdom and guidance and understanding. And every time I do that, I feel like it comes to me and I almost instantaneously calm down. So, that's what I've been doing recently when I feel that way. I'll also, more applicably, I guess you could say, or what's more applicable to everybody in a secular approach is, working out still. I haven't stopped working out. I don't even have access to a gym here. Everything's still closed where I am.
Uh-huh.
But working out is such a fundamental part of my lifestyle and is such an outlet for me to relieve stress and clear my mind that I'll never, ever stop doing that. You can put me in a freaking 12-foot box, lock me in there, and I'll still find a way to like train my body every day because I need to do that in order to have some semblance of sanity. You know what I'm saying? It's like a meditation too. I've always said that. Like, what is the goal of a lot of meditations, right? A lot of meditations kind of center around this idea of clearing your mind, getting rid of thoughts, right? Letting your like mind like calm down and not be so busy with thinking, right? And when you're like laying on a bench and you have like 315 pounds in your hands and you're lowering that down to your chest and pushing it up, you are not thinking about anything outside of pushing that weight up off your chest. There's no room for worrying about world events or politics or anything when you're in that moment, right? Because you just simply, it's such an intense activity that it requires 100% of your focus and your presence. And I find that is very, very therapeutic to my mind. And I've freaking known that since I was like 15 when I first started working out. So yeah, I think it's really important that people, and that's another thing that I do is I'll constantly be training. Just body weight stuff. I'll do blood flow restriction curls with bands. I got one of those pull-up bars that you like mount in a door frame. I'm just like doing pull-ups all the time. So, just doing what I got to do over here, man.
It's almost like, it's like in all of these different techniques, right? Like meditating, praying, journaling, the breathing, working out. It's all a way to affect where your focus is, your thoughts, and it's doing it in different ways, right? Like working out, it's a really physical exertion way to break like being stuck in a thinking pattern. It's like a physical, right? Meditating is like a spiritual or like energetic way to escape from the thinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the breathing, which is like a physical and almost like spiritual because of the way that it like gets your energy. They're all kind of almost similar strategies to develop like other parts of being a human than just sitting around thinking about negative stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think they all have a synergistic cumulative effect too. So you shouldn't just do one. You should do all of these things, especially right now.
Yeah. It's like, we know that when, like, it's interesting what you said, right? Working out is a good way to relieve stress. What is stress? It's a sympathetic response, right? It literally is the way to burn off the sympathetic juice.
It comes back to what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
What that fight or flight response being paired with physical movement. That's almost always, those two things always happened in tandem when our ancestors were evolving and developed the fight or flight response.
Yeah.
I think I think that it's like super important to like move your freaking body, even if you're just going to do some, body weight, yoga flow kind of thing. Just, you got to freaking move, man. You cannot be all stressed out and just sitting there being sedentary.
Yeah. If you're going to do that, you have to be like in a very meditative state, right? Where you're like going above that.
Yeah. I don't think that's good. I mean, even then, like if you're still experiencing all that stress and worry and chaos, and you're not like expressing it through your like body, then it's just going to get like stored in you, in your nervous system.
Gets all pent up, and then it's like, how does that end up escaping, right? That ends up creating all sorts of problems.
Oh yeah. Well, a lot of people believe that this is like the root cause of many different, chronic illnesses and disease.
Yeah, like in the cybernetic world, that's something they talk about a lot. But why would that not be true? Like if you have chronically elevated cortisol levels and other, hormonal responses by thinking negative thoughts. I mean, it seems perfectly logical that you would expect there to be some haywire.
They call that the nocebo effect.
Yeah.
You know how placebo is like miraculously like curing yourself with your thoughts? The nocebo is the exact opposite. It's creating illness in your own body, your physical body, through your thoughts.
Right. Like it's funny, right? Because like in chiro school and, like a lot of other medical professions, it's like, ooh, well, this medication didn't actually work. It was the placebo. And it's sort of like looked down upon. It's like, doesn't the placebo tell you how powerful beliefs are? Like, why is that not proof that the mind and beliefs are so powerful? Why is that?
I think we talked about this last time.
Did we? Okay. Well, here we are again, right? It's important.
I agree, though. I mean, if it's so powerful that it has to be controlled for in literally every single study, then like literally every single study, then why is it discounted as something that is not relevant?
Intentionally do. Why don't we intentionally use the thing that causes the placebo effect, which is the belief, and then just inundate ourselves with beliefs?
Well, there's no way to monetize people thinking positively.
You'd have to sell a book.
Oh yeah, I guess you could do that.
A program. Yeah. I mean, I feel like Napoleon Hill figured all this stuff out in like 1930 whenever he wrote the book, where it's like, you have to have faith and then believe it and then do it. That's key.
Yes.
That's key.
Yeah, fundamentally. Before action, you have to have that belief, faith, a vision,
desire. You have to have a burning.
It's only with those things as like a foundation. Only when you have those as a foundation will your action in the world ever be effective. Well, on a long-term trend.
Like if you don't believe that you can achieve something, you would never even try.
Yeah. So and if you did try, what kind of effort would you really put into it if you didn't believe you could do it?
Man, having belief is so powerful. Like believing and having faith, depending on what you have faith in, right? There's obviously like, different things you could have faith in, different religions, different, spiritual things, whatever. I mean, believing in yourself. Do you ever struggle with
that? Comes back to what we were talking to earlier too, before the podcast started. How the only real form of wealth at the foundation of it all is your capacity to earn wealth, your capacity to think clearly, make decisions, be decisive, and take actions in the world. The things that you have to do to generate wealth, that's, and a lot of that revolves around your physical health. If you let your physical health deteriorate, you're in sympathetic nervous system activation all the time, you're obese, you have myriad chronic illnesses. Like, how are you going to be an effective person in the world? Tell me that. If you want to play the game, you got to take care of the game piece. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And so and the game piece is what? Mind, body, and spirit, right? All three.
Yeah.
Mind, body, and energy, mind, body, soul.
This is why I had Paul Chek on my podcast, and I just love that guy.
I need to go
learn so much from him. He is like kind of like the grandfather of like holistic thinking, I guess you could say, in the fitness space, because he recognizes the importance of the mind, body, and spirit. And he's not a specialist and somebody that's an isolationist. And you have to think that way. You have to think holistically. You have to realize that each individual system that can be identified and studied is all a part of a whole system. And you have to become familiar with the whole system, not just one system that is a component piece of the whole. If you do that, you're going to be very, very limited in your understanding of how things are actually working. And this is true not only on the micro level with regards to your physical body and your health, but on the macro level as well. What's happening in the world. You have to like think about the big picture, as they say.
Otherwise you're missing, like if you're only focusing on your body and not your mind, like think about this, right? We're focused on the physical body because it's the most obvious thing. Like your body is the most obvious of the three pieces. Your mind is like I think of the mind as the electrical patterns of activity in the brain. I think of the brain as part of the body, and I think of the mind as the flowing of the energies.
Your nervous system.
Right. Because if you took, it's really interesting when we dissected cadavers in Cairo school, and I held the brain. I took the brain out of the skull and I held it, and I was like, that was one of the craziest moments of my life. But it was just a piece of anatomy. But in a living human, there's patterns of electrical activity. So I think of that as the mind. So like we just talked about, if you are not, and we have this incredible ability to control that electrical activity of the mind, right? By choosing our thoughts. And that has an effect on the physical. So like if you're working out, but you're thinking negative thoughts all the time, you're missing like a huge component.
Yeah. That's funny because, they say neurons that fire together wire together.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're firing your neuromuscular system while you're thinking all these negative thoughts, then like, are those negative thoughts becoming psychologically tied to the negative thoughts?
Yeah.
Or are the thoughts being tied to your working out? This is something that I've been thinking about with my friends with regards to like listening to like heavy metal music when I'm working out. Because like when you're firing your nervous system and you're training your body, you're firing your neurons pretty hard. You're getting a lot of, nervous system activity.
That's like the goal is to get more motor neuron recruitment.
Yeah. And like I said, neurons that fire together, wire together, they become neurologically associated with each other and start to fire together. So thought patterns start to fire in sync with, your neuromuscular system if you're doing those same things at the same time, right? So I was thinking about this like with heavy metal music with my friend, and I'm like, wow, I'm like programming all this like hardcore, like intense, emotion into my body when I'm like training it. And now I'm like, maybe I should just like listen to like classical music when I work out,
It's funny, right? You start to like ask questions like, why am I trying to get so ramped up?
Yeah. Why?
And then and I think it's because we don't ask the questions of like, well, what is the point of working out? Like, what is I was so deep in the CrossFit world for a long time that I didn't really ask that. It was more like, I want to get faster times. I want to get stronger, whatever. Because there's like a competitive aspect. But when you remove that, and I'm sure many, many people are confronting that now that there's no, gyms open, it's like, what is the point of, I know that like since the lockdown, I've asked myself, like, what is the point of X? What is the point of Y? Like so many times now about so many different things, right? Like
you should start a new company called the Philosopher's Fix.
Hey, maybe I should.
What is the point of this?
What is the point of this whole thing? What is the point of, anyways, yeah, it can turn to nihilism. But when you think about what is the point of working out? What is the point of exercising if you're not going to be like, if you're not training to play a sport or a race? Is it to get as jacked up emotionally and stressed out as possible? I think of it as like, well, I'd be curious.
We talked about this, before. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, it's okay. You don't have to apologize.
I think that everybody has different reasons. It's important to know the reason. Like a bodybuilder, has a very clear reason to be working out, right? Because he's competing in bodybuilding, so he's trying to maximize muscle hypertrophy. That person has a clear purpose for working out,
But then the question is, why are they competing in bodybuilding?
Well, you can always ask why, right? Isn't that like the philosopher's like dilemma? There's always a why. You can just keep going, why?
I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, why do we do what we do? Like,
it's like a thought exercise for sure. But the whys will never stop. You can ask yourself why all day and keep going down more and more and more and more. And maybe it's beneficial to do that, I think, if you've never done that before.
Yeah, you have to explore that, right? So like if you realize like, why am I listening to this music while I'm doing this? Is that actually helping me get from this workout what I'm trying to get?
Mm-hmm.
So what have you done? What have you done since then with the music? What did you conclude?
Well, I concluded that, what I thought was happening was likely what actually was happening. And I'm like, wow, I'm just like programming all this like rage and this like hateful energy into my body when I'm like working out. That's like not what I want to have in my body. So I stopped listening to that and I kind of switched more to like hip hop music, but like not like angry, violent hip hop music, like conscious hip hop. So I've been listening a lot too recently.
Conscious hip hop. Is that a,
yeah. It's like a genre of hip hop, I guess you can say, where they're not talking about like, they talk about positive thinking, stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe.
But it's got a good beat, good flow to it. So it's still like very rhythmic and musical. I can get down with that. But yeah, I've just switched away from that angrier music into stuff that's a little bit more chill. I haven't gone as chill as listening to classical music when I'm deadlifting in my backyard, but maybe I'll get to that point this summer, dude. We'll see.
Yeah, it's like, would that actually have it's like you don't want to ramp yourself up so that you just like exhaust your nervous system. Unless you're trying to do that. I mean, maybe you want to do that so that you get maximal neural output.
Another thing to consider if we're going to go down this why rabbit hole.
Yeah, we're going down.
Is if you're already, we already kind of agreed and discussed this already, that most people are in sympathetic nervous system activation right now. Just by default, the state of the world makes it so. People are stressed. When you're lifting weights and doing really intense physical activity, you're kind of activating that sympathetic nervous system even more.
That's kind of the point.
Yeah. So if you look at this like a scale, right? The sympathetic is already like way heavier than the parasympathetic, just by default. So it might not be good for people to be, lifting weights and doing HIIT training right now and ramping up that sympathetic nervous system even more. Maybe they need to do more of like soft training, just some form of movement, something that is actually a little bit more like relaxing, like yoga or something, as opposed to lifting weights right now.
It's important to think of it like that, like to not just think of a workout or exercise as like, it's this thing I do. So because I'm supposed to stay healthy and because I need to do it 5 days a week, whatever.
Yeah.
If you look at it as it is a physical way to create, it's a physical way to stress your body in your mind and your energies in some way, right? And you look at your life and what you need and then try to like tweak it to do that. That's powerful. If you have the ability to do that, that is like truly mastering physical activity and understanding like, okay, if things are really stressful, so I should do this, and having that kind of control, right? Because everybody you get a little bit of gratification when you get amped up, right? Because you get the, pumped up feeling and the hormones that go along with it. But is that really what you need?
Yeah, exactly, dude. I mean, I've been asking myself that question. Wow, dude, this has been like a therapy session. I'm coming away from this podcast with all sorts of new things that I have to implement in my own life.
Yeah, we both do, right? I got to do the breathing. I'm going to go do the breathing right after this. Get my session.
That's a good idea, man.
It's such a double-edged sword, the internet, mobile devices. You can learn so much from it, but it can, you're either using it or it's using you.
Yep.
And you gotta be aware of that.
I would say that I kind of feel bad criticizing the downfalls of social media and hyperconnectivity that the internet provides because, I built my career on that platform, as have you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, 100%, like you said, it's a double-edged sword. Many positive things come from the internet and the hyperconnectivity that we all have, and many negative things come from it as well. It's a tool that I think that people abuse.
Well, it's so new. We don't know how to, we really haven't learned how to use it to our advantage. And there's so much incentive to get people addicted to it that it's like one of the, like, I'm an altruistic capitalist, and I know you are too, where it's like capitalism helps people when everybody wins.
Yes.
The problem is when there's hidden costs. And the hidden cost of growing a social media platform and getting people to spend money on ads is that you are creating suffering and emotional stress in people. And it's not accounted for in the system. So people are making massive amounts of money, yet there's this hidden psychological stress that is not being accounted for.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Money is really not, once you have enough money to meet your needs, then that's all you really need. If you chase it beyond that point, it's probably going to produce dissatisfaction in your life or unhappiness to a certain degree. Depends on how high of a pedestal you put it on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, like in a lot of research on like motivation, like management and stuff, I think once people's needs are met and they have like a little bit of disposable income, the improvements in happiness are not correlated with money beyond a certain point.
Yep. That's what I'm talking about.
But yeah, I mean, it's just obviously money and all those things are very stressful right now as there's so much uncertainty of the economy, and it's almost like there's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like we're all like, oh, there's a big crash coming. There's a big crash. I mean, how long have people been saying that? Like, ooh, the one in 2008 wasn't it? There's a bigger one coming. And it's like, we're sort of like projecting that.
Yeah, dude.
And like
we're focusing on the exact same, we're focusing on the things collectively that we don't want to have happen.
Right. I mean, is that sort of like the nocebo effect on a macro 100%. Scale?
Yeah. Your thoughts predicate your reality. Thoughts, action, results. Right? So fundamentally, if thoughts are at the foundation of all of that, and collectively we're all thinking negatively about the future, then yeah, what is going to happen? The future is going to mirror our thoughts. You know, the esoteric mystery religions have talked about that forever. As above, so below. What you think on the micro is reflected in the macro and vice versa. You know?
That's why it's so important that we, as you said earlier, take care of our own health. Like, humanity is a collection of individual humans.
Exactly.
If each person focused on making themselves healthy using the tools that you've described, breathing, using certain herbs, adaptogens, working out, if everybody did that, I mean, is there any debate that things would get better?
Not in my mind.
And so it's like, if we're not individually doing that, why do we expect things to get better?
Amen, dude. I mean, that's why I've been spreading the message that I've been spreading for as long as I've been a professional, and you have as well, because I think we both realize that, right? We're trying to empower people to be healthy.
Exactly.
Because, yeah, you know, society is just a summation of all the people that live in it, right?
Yeah. And right. And the economics is just how quickly things are trading. Yeah. Essentially.
I said this last year. I selfishly want to help other people because I am in society with everybody else. And if my neighbors, my brothers and my sisters out there are not taking care of themselves, that actually affects me directly. Yeah. Because I am in society with these people, you know? So I want everybody to feel as happy and be as healthy and be as capable as they can. Honestly, purely for selfish reasons, because they affect me.
Right. If they're all better, then it helps you. Of course.
Correct. Right. I want everybody to feel happy, to be healthy, to be physically fit, to have great relationships, to live in a beautiful place, to be connected with nature, to be taking herbs all the time. Because if they're happy and they're doing all that stuff, then that's just going to make the world as a whole a better place.
Yeah. And and I think that the certain argument that people might make against that is like, well, that's not actually, everybody's not going to do that. So what's the point of me doing it? And it's like, that is the freaking problem. That's the problem. Like, well, what does it really matter if I don't? Yeah. That apathy is just destructive.
Yeah. Well, that's like nihilism, like what you said earlier.
Right. Like, well, I mean, it's not actually going to make a difference.
Yeah. It's the limiting belief.
If anything, it'll make a difference for you, because if you feel better, everything's better for you.
Yeah.
And as a side effect, that can have a trickling effect to affecting other
and again,
people.
The macro is just a reflection of the micro. And that's what I was saying earlier. It's like you have to be clear on what you actually have influence over and what you don't have influence over. We don't have influence over like the orbit of our planet. We do have influence over our own health, which can ripple out into society as a whole.
Yeah.
And people need to understand that if you're thinking the way that Ryan just, was demonstrating, like, oh, well, it's not really going to make a difference if I do this. That's actually just wrong. It will, because like I said, the macro, the whole is a reflection of the micro. Change begins with individuals. That means you listening and watching this.
That means,
and you have to understand that.
That means you listening,
you,
whoever you are right now, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly, dude.
I can't wait to chat in like a week after you do the phone thing and I do the breathing. And it's so,
I think it's going to help me a lot.
So that's why, that's one of the reasons
I've been very stressed lately, despite all the things I've been doing.
Yeah, dude, I think about that too. Like you said at the beginning, when you take on the weight of trying to run your own business, you're either going to develop certain skills or you're going to just collapse under the pressure of the uncertainty and the stress and the risk and the opportunity cost of like, what if I go down this route for 10 years and it turns out to be bad? And then there's like, you have to deal with all that, right?
Yep.
And now just everybody in the world has to deal with this uncertainty. And if you're not equipped for it or don't have tools to regulate your own emotional status, your thinking, it's so much. And I just wonder, I'm an optimist. I'm an optimistic realist. And I think that this is a huge stressor that we will all benefit from and look back and realize, oh, this was a time when it forced a lot of people to re-examine themselves. And I'm optimistic that will lead to, people develop, like you put something under pressure, you put people under pressure. A lot of times that's what, causes development, stress. So I hope that this stress around the world helps everybody to develop and see that they can handle uncertainty, that they can find peace inside themselves, that they understand that they're in charge of their own emotions and their actions. That's my hope, at least.
Yeah, man, I mirror you in that. I hope for the same thing, for sure.
Well, I really enjoyed having you on the show. I'm glad we had this chat. I think that spreading this type of stuff is super important, and it starts with your intentional intent, the conscious awareness of your own thoughts and your ability to do certain actions.
Mm-hmm.
It's much more 100%. Than just how do you, like, what workout to do today. It's like there's so many layers before that of really achieving health.
Absolutely, man.
So yeah, I appreciate your time and sharing.
It's always a pleasure.
Personal info about what you do and your own. I mean, there's a certain level of vulnerability when you publicly share your own sort of like negative thoughts that you have to handle, right? And I appreciate that you're honest about that. It's like,
yeah, man.
Vulnerability is something that I think we're all going to have to learn a little bit more of too.
For sure.
Well, hey, where can people? You've been having some really awesome podcasts lately. You had, you said Paul Chek, who's your mentor. I didn't realize that. You had the podcast recently with about hair loss that I'm gonna listen to. I'm getting in my mid-30s here. I got to check it out. That's for those listening, GuerrillaZen podcast.
Yep. GuerrillaZen podcast.
And then you've been posting a lot on YouTube recently too. I was looking.
Yeah. Some on YouTube, on Instagram. Find me on both of those places. GuerrillaZen.
Mm-hmm. And Potentia Wellness is where people can get the mushroom blend.
Yes, sir. Zen Blend. It's a product that helps with stress, basically.
Seems useful right about now. I can't wait till I can get some.
Definitely.
Once
I'll have to send you some, man. I'll send you some.
Yeah, once I get back to the U.S., I'm gonna.
Oh yeah, that's why I didn't send you some. I forgot because you live down there. Yeah. Yeah. Once you get back, man, let me know. I'll send you a bottle.
Awesome. Appreciate it, man. Dude. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you. Bye-bye.